Of all the harmful misinformation spread over the past couple of years, one of the most disturbing false narratives was targeted at the Nobel Prize-winning human medicine, ivermectin. What you're about to see will reveal the motive behind the smear campaign against one of the safest and most effective medicines of this era, a medicine that, according to the numerous top scientists I've interviewed this year.
It blows my mind that Joe Rogan just yesterday admitted to taking ivermectin.
Ivermectin is something more often used to deworm horses.
CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Rogan telling his 13 million Instagram followers that he was treated with several drugs, and he included ivermectin on the list, a drug used for livestock.
Rogan said the word ivermectin. Yes, that's the deworming medicine made to kill parasites in farm animals.
Could have ended the pandemic before it began.
Worse by people who have refused to take the vaccine and instead are swallowing horse paste.
Horse dewormer. There's no clinical evidence that indicates that this works.
It can kill you.
It can kill you.
Turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the...
He went so far as to actually alter one of his videos to make him look more yellow.
Decreased mortality in COVID-19 patients. Analysis of a national federated database. Results: 41,000 patients who had COVID-19, so 41,608 patients had COVID-19. Treated with ivermectin, the group there was 1,072. Treated with the much more expensive remdesivir, 40,530,000. Ivermectin was associated with the reduced mortality versus remdesivir of the odds ratio of 0.381. In other words, you're about 70% less likely to die.
Used the term y'all to express denigration of ivermectin as a horse drug. I have horses. The truth is that the dose that's used for horses by body weight is the same dose that's recommended for humans, but it's formulated and manufactured to a quality standard that's very different.
Lots of medicines are used in both animals and humans, so it's not a sufficient argument for somebody to say, it's a horse dewormer.
Yesterday, the CDC put out a national advisory on this, warning the whole country against taking this drug, ivermectin, formulated for horses and cattle.
A group of five, the core five of us ICU doctors, collectively, we're some of the most highly published doctors in the history of critical care medicine.
Numerous studies, backed up by thousands of doctors, have found early use of ivermectin reduces the risk of death from the China virus by over 62%. Much better than the Pfizer vaccine, which just got FDA approval and currently sits at less than 42% effectiveness.
Hit, my clinical and academic world was turned upside down.
Twitter, in its wisdom, has decided to suspend the account of Dr. Robert Malone. Now, Robert Malone happens to be the inventor of the mRNA technology of making vaccines. His Twitter account has been suspended because he was allegedly spreading misinformation on COVID-19 vaccines. Let that sink in.
Touted as a miracle prevention and cure by far-right commentators and anti-vaxxers.
I'm not, although I've been characterized as a right-wing Proud Boy. This is a bipartisan issue, and the physicians represented here are truly a bipartisan group.
I had to stand by idly watching these people die.
From the FDA, Emergency Use Authorization of Medical Products and Related Authorities. For the FDA to issue an emergency use authorization, there must be no adequate, approved, and available alternative to the candidate product for diagnosing, preventing, or treating the disease or condition. If ivermectin were an effective treatment, the vaccines never would have gotten emergency use authorization.
In the last 9 months, in our review of all of the literature as a group, again, we are some of the most highly published physicians in our specialty and the world. Now, come to the conclusion, after 9 months, and I have to point out, I am severely troubled by the fact that the NIH, the FDA, and the CDC, I do not know of any task force that was assigned or compiled to review repurposed drugs in an attempt to treat this disease. Everything has been about novel and or expensive pharmaceutically engineered drugs and remdesivir and monoclonal antibodies and vaccines. There is a drug that is proving to be of miraculous impact. And when I say miracle, I do not use that term lightly. And I don't want to be sensationalized when I say that. That is a scientific recommendation based on mountains of data that has emerged in the last 3 months. When I am told, and I just had to hear this in the opening sentence, that we are touting things that are not FDA or NIH recommended, let me be clear. The NIH, their recommendation on ivermectin, which is to not use it outside of controlled trials, is from August 27th. We are now in December. This is 3 to 4 months later. Mountains of data have emerged from many centers and countries around the world showing the miraculous effectiveness of ivermectin. It basically obliterates transmission of this virus. If you take it, you will not get sick. Briefly summarize it. Number one, we have evidence that ivermectin is effective not only in prophylaxis, in the prevention. If you take it, you will not get sick. We just came across a trial last night from Argentina by the lead investigator of ivermectin in Argentina, Dr. Hector Carvalho. They prophylaxed 800 healthcare workers.
Have called ivermectin snake oil, and they have said it doesn't work. Well, let's have a look what our National Clinical Evidence Task Force says about this. And I quote, they say, evidence comes from 13 randomised trials in over 1,260 adults. 13 trials. So we're actually getting up there, Deputy Speaker, in the number of randomised trials and the number of adults. Now, what does our National Evidence Task Force find, Deputy Speaker? Well, surprise, surprise. They show a 67%.
Nigeria has the highest malaria burden in the world. So everybody gets hydroxychloroquine once a week. They call it Sunday. Everybody in the country takes it on Sunday. They had the highest river blindness burden, so half the country's on ivermectin. Nigeria never had an epidemic. It had a death rate in Nigeria of 14 people per million population. Our death rate, 3,000 per million population. Blacks in our countries were dying at 3.6 times the rate of whites. So why were American blacks dying and Nigerian blacks weren't? And then you go to Haiti. Haiti had and by the way, Nigeria had a 1.3% vaccination rate. Haiti had a 1.4% vaccination rate. And they had a death rate of 15 people per million population. These are the countries that Tony Fauci and Bill Gates said, we got to get them vaccinated. We got to
Japan on ivermectin. Japanese miracle, really. Let me just show you some graphics of Japan. It really is quite astounding compared to what we're still going through in the UK, the United States, Europe, other places. Here's the situation in Japan. So here we are now, very, very low cases, having come down from this massive increase here. And we fussed about this a lot and warned about how dangerous the Olympics were at this time. Now, just looking at this last massive wave, sort of tsunami of cases in Japan, that's that wave in a little more detail. So that's kind of spread out the timeline a bit there. So that's from the 3rd of August to the 12th of September, when the cases were high in Japan. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you must be a very strange coincidence, but let's look at it. Now, this is the date here when ivermectin was allowed as a treatment in Japan, the 13th of August.
This is a weird coinky-dink. This is when they allowed ivermectin to be used to treat coronavirus, COVID-19, in Japan. That's when they did it. So let's watch this weird coincidence.
Now, if you Google this, if you Google ivermectin Japan, you'll get at the first 30 or 40 or 50 and entrances will be saying that Japan has not approved ivermectin as an official treatment for COVID-19. And that's true, it hasn't. But I'm going to show you why I've got this date on here now. That one there's the 13th of August, ivermectin allowed as a treatment in Japan. So that was the 13th there, that day there. So 13. So the cases started to completely plummet off down to where we are now in Japan. So one of those interesting coincidences.
So that's a coinky-dink. That I cannot say that that's what caused that. We're not allowed to say that. I'm not saying that. But he's pointing it out with a wink, and he's saying it's interesting. You never hear them talk about this coincidence on the mainstream news. They'll never talk about it.
Reduction in death